The silent invasion. The stars disappeared first. Not all at once, but gradually enough that only the most dedicated astronomers noticed. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the Beijing Observatory's control room, comparing satellite data from the past week when she first spotted the anomaly. Entire sections of the night sky were going dark, as if someone was drawing a curtain across the cosmos. "Director Wu, you need to see this," she called out, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. The observatory's director shuffled over, coffee cup in hand, his tired eyes widening as she showed him the progression. It wasn't that the stars were vanishing. Something was blocking them. Within hours, observatories worldwide confirmed the same phenomenon. Whatever was approaching Earth was massive enough to obscure entire star systems, yet somehow remained invisible to conventional detection methods. The scientific community buzzed with theories, but in the secure conference rooms of military installations across the globe, commanders prepared for the worst. They didn't have to wait long. On a quiet Tuesday morning, every screen on Earth, from Times Square billboards to smartphones in rural villages, went dark simultaneously. When they flickered back to life, the message was simple. We are the ascendancy. We have been watching. The aliens didn't arrive in massive ships or with spectacular displays of force. They were already here, had been for weeks, their nanoscale technology infiltrating Earth's digital infrastructure with frightening efficiency. Their first demonstration of power wasn't a weapon, it was control. Admiral James Harrison stood in the Pentagon's command center, watching as system after system reported unexpected behaviors. Military satellites repositioned themselves without authorization. Nuclear facilities went into automatic shutdown. The entire global defense network was being rewritten in real time. "Sir," a young lieutenant called out, her voice cracking. "They're in everything. Every networked system, every database. They're not attacking. They're integrating." The Ascendancy's second message arrived 12 hours later, broadcast simultaneously in every language on every device. "Your technological infrastructure is now part of our network. This is not an invasion. This is an upgrade. Resistance would only delay your species' advancement." In the days that followed, humanity discovered just how complete the alien integration was. Vehicles wouldn't start without Ascendancy approval. Communications were monitored and filtered. Even the internet had become an alien-regulated space, though strangely they seemed more interested in organizing and optimizing it than restricting access. Dr. Chen worked tirelessly with an international team of scientists, trying to understand the nature of the alien technology. "It's like they've turned our entire digital infrastructure into a living organism," she explained during an emergency UN session, broadcast globally by the Ascendancy themselves. "They're not destroying or replacing. They're evolving our technology to match theirs." The aliens' physical presence, when finally revealed, was equally unsettling. They appeared as shimmering, translucent humanoids, their forms composed of what appeared to be living light. They walked through walls, passed through solid matter, and could manifest anywhere with digital infrastructure, which, in the modern world, meant virtually everywhere. Admiral Harrison found himself in the unusual position of trying to defend against an enemy that had already won without firing a shot. "They're not occupying us," he told the Joint Chiefs. "They're absorbing us. The question is, do we let them?" As the first week drew to a close, humanity faced an uncomfortable truth. They were no longer in control of their own civilization. The Ascendancy had reshaped their world without a single act of violence, turning humanity's greatest strength, its technological advancement, into the very means of its potential subjugation. But in labs and hidden facilities across the globe, humans began to notice something curious. Dr. Chen, working late one night, discovered an anomaly in the alien code that suggested their control wasn't as absolute as it appeared. The very complexity of their technology might be hiding a fundamental weakness, one that would require humanity to think not like the advanced civilization they wanted to be, but like the resourceful species they had always been. The question was, could they exploit this weakness before the Ascendancy's upgrade became permanent? The price of freedom. The Ascendancy's ultimatum came precisely 1 week after their revelation. Their shimmering forms appeared simultaneously in every major government chamber worldwide, their message clear and unwavering. Your species stands at a crossroads, the alien representative announced to the UN Security Council, its voice resonating with an almost musical quality. Accept our guidance, and within 1 generation, your children will touch the stars. Resist, and remain bound to your primitive limitations. You have 72 hours to decide. In the depths of the Pentagon's Cyber Command Center, Admiral Harrison watched the transmission with growing unease. The aliens' offer was seductive. Their technology had already revolutionized Earth's infrastructure in just a week. Traffic accidents had dropped to 0. Disease diagnosis had become instantaneous. Energy production had tripled while pollution plummeted. But Dr. Chen's discovery was troubling him. The physicist had found something in the alien code, a pattern that suggested their benevolent upgrade might have a darker purpose. It's like watching a python slowly coil around its prey, she explained during a secure briefing, using one of the few remaining uncompromised communications channels, an old analog system from the Cold War. Each improvement, each upgrade, wraps us tighter in their system. Soon, we won't be able to function without them. Private Maya Rodriguez, a young signal specialist, had been the first to notice something odd about the alien transmissions. Working with Dr. Chen's team, she'd identified microscopic delays in the Ascendancy's responses to human activities, delays that shouldn't exist in their supposedly superior technology. It's as if they're checking everything with someone else first, Rodriguez theorized, like they're not really in charge. The revelation sparked a new line of investigation. Dr. Chen's team began analyzing the patterns of alien behavior, looking for inconsistencies. They found them. Subtle but significant variations that suggested the Ascendancy might not be the autonomous force they claimed to be. Meanwhile, humanity's response to the ultimatum remained divided. Many welcomed the aliens' offer, pointing to the unprecedented advances of the past week. Others, like Harrison, saw the loss of independence as too high a price. The Chinese government was the first to formally accept the Ascendancy's offer. Within hours, their entire nation's infrastructure underwent a dramatic transformation. Gleaming towers of impossible architecture rose from the ground, constructed by swarms of nanomachines. Disease vanished. Poverty disappeared overnight. But in a small laboratory on the outskirts of Beijing, Dr. Chen made a horrifying discovery. The biological samples she'd been studying showed signs of subtle but accelerating genetic modification. The Ascendancy wasn't just upgrading their technology. They were preparing to upgrade humanity itself. They're not here to help us evolve, she reported to Admiral Harrison. They're here to ensure we evolve exactly as they want us to. As the deadline approached, resistance movements began to form. Not with weapons or armies, but with something the Ascendancy hadn't expected: creativity. Underground networks of artists, musicians, and storytellers began sharing unfiltered human experiences, keeping alive the spark of unregulated human expression. Harrison received reports of people deliberately using obsolete technology, creating spaces where the alien influence couldn't reach. Communities began rediscovering old ways of living. Finding strength in the very limitations the Ascendancy sought to fix. Private Rodriguez, working with a global team of hackers, made another crucial discovery. The aliens' control over Earth's technology, while vast, wasn't absolute. There were gaps, microsecond vulnerabilities in their network that suggested they weren't as omnipotent as they appeared. With less than 24 hours until the deadline, humanity faced its greatest decision. The Ascendancy's gifts were real, their power undeniable. But the price, the loss of human autonomy, the surrender of their right to choose their own path, was becoming clearer. In hidden rooms and secret meetings, plans were being made. Dr. Chen's research suggested a possible weakness in the alien network. Harrison's military experience provided strategy, and Rodriguez's discovery offered a glimmer of hope, a way to fight back that the ascendancy might never expect. The countdown continued, but humanity wasn't just waiting for the deadline. They were preparing to show the aliens something they hadn't counted on: the unpredictable, indomitable spirit of a species that had thrived not despite its limitations, but because of them. The human factor. With 18 hours remaining until the ascendancy's deadline, Dr. Sarah Chen made the breakthrough that would change everything. She'd been studying the aliens' code for days, barely sleeping, when she noticed something that everyone else had missed. The ascendancy's technology wasn't just advanced, it was perfect. Too perfect. "Look at this," she told Admiral Harrison, pointing to streams of alien code flowing across her screen. "There's no redundancy, no error correction. Their systems don't account for mistakes because they don't expect any. They've evolved beyond imperfection, and that's their weakness." In the Pentagon's basement, Private Rodriguez had assembled a team of hackers and analog specialists. They'd been experimenting with deliberately imperfect code, programs that made mistakes, corrected themselves, and evolved in ways the aliens' perfectly optimized systems couldn't predict. "It's like teaching a chess grandmaster to play Calvin ball," Rodriguez explained, referencing the famously rule-less game. "They can't win because they can't comprehend a system that isn't perfectly logical." The resistance movement had grown, spreading through old radio frequencies and handwritten notes. People began sharing techniques for introducing controlled chaos into their daily lives, ways to behave that the ascendancy's predictive algorithms couldn't anticipate. Street artists in Paris began creating paintings that changed based on viewer perspective. Musicians in Lagos composed songs with deliberately irregular rhythms. Programmers in Seoul wrote code that included purposeful glitches that somehow made their programs run better. The ascendancy noticed these anomalies but seemed unable to understand them. Their attempts to optimize these irregularities only made them more unpredictable. For the first time, the aliens showed signs of confusion. Dr. Chen's team made another crucial discovery. The ascendancy's network, vast as it was, operated on principles of quantum coherence. They maintained their control through perfect synchronization across their entire system. But quantum coherence was notoriously fragile. The slightest disruption could collapse it. "They're not just connected," Chen explained to a room full of military and scientific leaders. "They're a single quantum system. If we can disrupt that coherence in enough places simultaneously, their entire network could collapse." Admiral Harrison saw the potential immediately. "We don't need to fight their technology," he realized. "We need to overwhelm it with complexity." The plan came together quickly. Using the old analog networks, resistance cells worldwide prepared for coordinated action. They would fight perfection with imperfection, order with controlled chaos, prediction with spontaneity. The ascendancy, meanwhile, had begun their final preparations. Their shimmering forms appeared more frequently, supervising the installation of new optimization centers in major cities. These structures, built from living light and impossible geometry, were meant to be the control points for humanity's final transformation. But they hadn't noticed the subtle changes taking place. In homes and offices around the world, people began introducing small irregularities into their daily routines. They took different routes to work, varied their speech patterns, made deliberate mistakes and corrections. Each tiny deviation created microscopic disruptions in the ascendancy's quantum network. Private Rodriguez's team had discovered something else. The aliens' communication delays weren't just about checking with superiors. They were gaps in quantum coherence, moments when the network had to re-establish its perfect synchronization. "They're not just maintaining control," Rodriguez told Harrison. "They're constantly rebuilding it, and each rebuild takes a little longer than the last." With 12 hours remaining, humanity began its most ambitious project ever. Not the creation of something perfect, but the orchestrated embrace of imperfection. Scientists worked alongside artists, soldiers alongside hackers, each group contributing to a plan that defied conventional logic. Dr. Chen, running simulations on her jury-rigged computer system, predicted they would only get one chance. The Ascendancy's network was already showing signs of strain from humanity's increasing unpredictability. When it finally broke, the collapse would be total. The aliens, perhaps sensing something was wrong, accelerated their timeline. New messages appeared worldwide. Your time for consideration has been reduced. Submit now or face obsolescence. But humanity had already made its decision. They would not submit to a future of perfect control. Instead, they would show the Ascendancy something they had never encountered in all their optimization of the galaxy, the profound strength of embracing imperfection. Operation Dawn. The Ascendancy never saw it coming because they were looking for the wrong thing. They monitored military bases for signs of conventional warfare. They watched nuclear facilities for hints of desperate launches. They analyzed global communications for evidence of coordinated resistance. But they weren't watching for poetry. It began in Tokyo. A street performer began reciting a poem with deliberate grammatical errors, her words echoing through the district's speaker systems that the Ascendancy had optimized for perfect sound quality. The alien network attempted to correct the errors, but each correction only amplified the irregularities. Within minutes, similar performances began worldwide. In New York, jazz musicians played impossible rhythms. In Mumbai, dancers moved in patterns that defied mathematical prediction. In Rio, street artists created murals that changed meaning depending on how many people were looking at them. Admiral Harrison, watching from the Pentagon's command center, saw the first signs of the Ascendancy's network struggling to maintain coherence. "They're trying to optimize chaos," he said, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. "It's like trying to alphabetize a hurricane." Dr. Chen's team had prepared for this moment. As the alien systems struggled with the growing chaos, they launched their second phase. Worldwide, people began using technology in ways that defied logical efficiency. They sent messages backwards, created programs that improved by making mistakes, and built machines that worked better when they weren't perfectly aligned. Private Rodriguez coordinated the digital assault. Her team of hackers didn't try to break the alien network. They introduced elements that made it question its own perfection. They created data paradoxes, logical loops that were both true and false, programs that were more efficient when they failed. The Ascendancy's response was immediate but ineffective. Their shimmering forms appeared everywhere, trying to restore order. But each attempt to impose perfection only created more irregularities. Their quantum network, designed for absolute coherence, began showing signs of strain. "Look at their response times," Rodriguez called out, monitoring the global feedback. "The delays are getting longer. They're losing synchronization." In Beijing, Dr. Chen watched as the aliens' optimization centers began to flicker. The structures of living light, once perfectly geometric, started showing signs of asymmetry. The Ascendancy's control was slipping, not through force or violence, but through humanity's embrace of its own beautiful imperfection. The aliens made their final attempt to regain control. Their message boomed across the planet. "This rebellion is inefficient. Your resistance lacks purpose. Submit to optimization." But humanity answered with a cacophony of purpose. Children drew pictures that couldn't be scanned into digital files. Musicians played songs that couldn't be recorded. Writers created stories that changed every time they were read. Each act of creative defiance sent ripples through the Ascendancy's network. Admiral Harrison received reports from around the world. The aliens' technology was failing, not all at once, but in a cascade of beautiful imperfection. Their perfectly optimized systems couldn't handle the overwhelming complexity of human creativity unleashed. Dr. Chen's monitors showed the quantum coherence collapsing. "Their network is breaking down," she announced. "They can't maintain synchronization across so many points of chaos." The Ascendancy made one last attempt to restore order. Their forms gathered above major cities, trying to project an image of overwhelming power. but their usually perfect manifestations wavered, distorted by humanity's deliberate embrace of imperfection. Private Rodriguez's team delivered the final stroke. They introduced a program that wasn't a virus or an attack. It was an invitation. An invitation for the Ascendancy's network to experience something it had never known. The beauty of imperfection, the strength of adaptation, the power of embracing chaos. The effect was devastating. The aliens' quantum network, faced with accepting imperfection or maintaining its perfect coherence, began to tear itself apart. Their optimization centers dissolved into cascades of light. Their control over Earth's infrastructure faltered and failed. As the sun rose over each time zone, humanity watched the Ascendancy's perfect system collapse, not through violence or force, but through the simple, profound power of embracing their own nature. They had defeated an advanced civilization, not by becoming more like them, but by becoming more fully themselves. One word. As their perfect network crumbled, the Ascendancy experienced something entirely new: confusion. Their shimmering forms gathered above the United Nations building in New York, no longer projecting serene confidence but flickering with uncertainty. Their once flawless manifestations now rippled with distortions, perfect symmetry giving way to chaotic patterns that seemed almost human. Dr. Chen, watching from her lab, saw something extraordinary in her readings. The quantum disruption isn't just affecting their network, she reported to Admiral Harrison. It's changing them. They're adapting. Private Rodriguez's monitoring systems confirmed it. The Ascendancy's attempts to restore order had forced them to do something they'd never done before: embrace imperfection. Each effort to counter humanity's chaos introduced more complexity into their own system. They're learning, Rodriguez whispered, watching the data streams. They're learning how to be imperfect. The Ascendancy's final message came not as a command but as a question, their once musical voice carrying notes of genuine bewilderment. Why do you choose chaos over perfection? Why embrace failure when success is offered? Admiral Harrison stood before the UN General Assembly, now packed with representatives from every nation. The world watched through whatever screens still functioned, their technology slowly returning to human control as the alien network continued to unravel. Behind him, the Ascendancy's forms waited, their presence diminished but not defeated. They had come offering perfection to a species they saw as flawed. Instead, they had found something they never expected: a civilization that had grown strong not despite its imperfections, but because of them. Harrison looked up at the aliens, then back at the assembly of human faces. Artists and scientists, soldiers and hackers, all united not in submission to perfection, but in celebration of their beautiful, chaotic humanity. "You asked us to submit," he began, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. "You offered us optimization, efficiency, perfection. You showed us wonders and promised us the stars." He paused, looking at Dr. Chen in the audience, at Rodriguez at her command console, at all the faces that had chosen freedom over perfection. "But you never understood what makes us human. We are not defined by our achievements but by our attempts. Not by our successes but by how we face failure. Not by our perfection but by our constant, beautiful struggle to improve." The Ascendancy's forms shifted, their light pulsing with new patterns as they processed his words. "You offered us your version of advancement," Harrison continued. "But advancement without choice isn't progress, it's programming. Growth without struggle isn't evolution, it's formatting. You wanted to optimize us, but you would have deleted the very things that make us worth optimizing." He stepped forward, and in that moment he spoke not just as a military leader, but as a representative of humanity itself. "So here is our response to your demand for submission. One word that contains everything we are, everything we've fought for, everything we'll continue to fight for." The world held its breath. The Ascendancy's forms leaned forward, their light dimming to listen. Harrison smiled, and in his smile was the entirety of human history, every failure that led to success, every fall that preceded flight, every imperfect step that had brought them to this moment. "Evolve," he said. The word echoed through the chamber, through the airwaves, through the very network the ascendancy had built. But it wasn't a command or a refusal. It was an invitation. An invitation to learn what humanity had known all along. That true evolution comes not from achieving perfection, but from the endless, beautiful struggle to improve. The ascendancy's forms began to change, their perfect symmetry dissolving into something new, something that embraced both order and chaos. They had come to upgrade humanity, but instead found themselves transformed by the very imperfection they had sought to eliminate. As their ships departed Earth's atmosphere, they left behind not the perfect world they had planned to create, but something far more valuable, a humanity that had proven its worth not through submission to perfection, but through the courage to remain beautifully, powerfully imperfect. Dr. Chen, watching them go, made one final entry in her research log. Today we taught the most advanced civilization we've ever encountered the most human lesson of all, that perfection is not an achievement to be reached, but a journey to be embraced, with all its glorious imperfections. The stars returned to the sky that night, unchanged yet somehow different. Humanity had faced its greatest test, not through force of arms or technological superiority, but through the simple, profound courage to be themselves. They had shown the galaxy something it desperately needed to learn, that in the end, the most perfect system is one that knows how to embrace imperfection. The end.